I'd been contacted by firms to join their firm that they were bringing to Nashville, Tennessee, because of the business growth and the opportunity that was here. And that was something I thought, gosh, we've got offices in Texas, we've got them in Arkansas, and we've got them in uh, across state Tennessee. And so, how can we differentiate ourselves? How can we be the buyer and not the bought?
Welcome to the Yeah But podcast, where leaders transform excuses into breakthroughs. I'm Mark Wolfe, host and author of Yeah But. I interview New York Times bestselling authors, human rights activists, former CIA director, and everyone in between. Our guests share how they overcome doubts like I'm not ready to yeah, but I don't have time. Join us to learn how you can do the same. Marc Dedman, welcome to the Yeah But podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like our audience to get to know you better. One of my first questions that I always ask every guest is to tell us about you personally. Just two things about you personally.
I come from very atypical background for lawyer, and what I have done. Um, Lived in Arkansas, had some crazy jobs, which I hope we have time to get into some of those. Got a scholarship to go to college, otherwise I would not have been able to go. Ended up going undergrad, Loyola, New Orleans, then Tulane Law School. Went to undergrad through an ROTC scholarship, so I had military obligation, went into the Army, spent most of that time in Washington, D.C., had some fantastic experiences there for such a young attorney. And then took the GMAT and went to Columbia, got an MBA to go into investment banking, ended up going back into the practice of law instead. So that is me in a nutshell. And I still love Arkansas and have some good friends over there still.
You're married too, so you have a bride, don't you?
Yes, I do. She's been a big part of all these decisions that I made. We're definitely a team with respect to this. I wanted to go into investment banking very strongly. She didn't want to stay in New York back then. This was 1980s, and it was not not the New York of 10 years ago. And she had several incidents that were pretty scary for her, including a mugging of one of her friends on the Upper East Side, which is where we lived at that time. But so she didn't particularly want to stay there, and she wanted to move to Memphis, which is where I had family living at the time. And so I went down to Memphis, Tennessee, and to look in investment banking. There was none back then, in the late 1980s. There were some finance positions. There were some sales and trading, but I didn't want to do that. So there were some finance positions. And someone talked to me. So I had an undergrad degree in finance, law degree, then a master's at Columbia, in which I had been the teaching assistant for securities analysis. Double majored in banking and banking and investment banking and finance. Those were my two majors. Went down and got a job opportunity in Memphis, and this was in 1989, 1989, $20,000. I couldn't even pay off my student loans with that. So I went back in the practice of law, which I liked anyway. I liked it a whole lot. So it's really a no-lose proposition for what we did. Moving down there, but that's how I ended up back in the practice of law, and just have enjoyed it ever since. Again, there wasn't a wrong decision, and I don't regret having gone to Columbia. Caused me to think different ways, and we'll probably be talking about that as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think what reminds me why this matters to our audience is that it's not always a linear path to get from one place to another. And there was an interesting story that I researched about you. You always knew you wanted to be a lawyer, even at a young age. But before we even talk about that, you grew up in Arkansas, and when you were a youth, you worked in rice fields in Arkansas. Is that true?
One summer, yeah. I worked in a hospital maintenance department, picking up trash and mowing one summer, or 2 summers actually. Then I worked in a rice field one summer, which was the hardest job. The minimum wage then was $1.25 an hour, but that didn't apply to farm workers. So I was getting less than that. And by the way, Arkansas was one of the largest producers of rice in the world on planet Earth. And rice fields are spectacularly beautiful when the sun hits just right. It's this green that is impossible to describe. It'd be a beautiful, beautiful painting. Having said that, rice needs full sun, so there are no trees. And then you've got levees around because it's in water. And these massive fields. And so what happened was we had a job to go out that year. They had missed the time for spraying for certain weeds or what shouldn't be in there, so they had to be pulled by hand. Well, water's about that deep, and so you're going through and you're reaching down into the water's going up to your shoulder, and you're having to pull up by the roots and throw over to the levees between all the fields. So you're going through. What you don't maybe know is that rice is very sharp. It's like a knife or even like a razor blade, so it will cut you. So you're wearing long sleeve shirts as you're walking through these fields in 100-degree sun. That's why you start so early in the morning, because by noon or so, right around there, you couldn't go into the afternoon. It'd be too hot. And so you're covered with sweat, long sleeve shirt, overalls, because you had to wear long pants, so your legs would be ripped up, reaching down, pulling it up, throwing it over. But you can't kill the rice, so you've got to do your legs like this as you go through, kind of exercising. Yoga. That was yoga before we even knew what yoga was in the United States.
And then there's snakes.
Snakes.
And there's rats.
No, the snakes weren't snakes. They were water moccasins, cottonmouth.
Okay.
And we did see them.
Okay.
We actually saw them, and huge spiders, all for the opportunity to make whatever it was, 85 cents, 90 cents an hour.
Wow.
Yeah, so I ended up making maybe $27 a week, $28 a week. Wow. Yeah.
So that's an interesting start for a guy that.
And then I jumped straight to law.
The path is linear. So there you are working, and again, that was insightful for me to find out about Arkansas. And again, people from Arkansas are like, yeah, why would you not know that? I'm like, I just never saw that. So that's interesting. And then you, as a 10-year-old, or at the time, you wanted to be an attorney. You knew you wanted to be an attorney at that age?
It's what I said. I mean, I do remember saying that because I did it. I never veered from that.
How did you know? I mean, that's an amazing age to be like, I want to be it. Because, I mean, when we're little kids, some people want to be doctors, some people want to be lawyers, they want to be an astronaut. But you actually took what you did at 10 and decided, this is really what I want to be?
Yeah, I was fifth grade, yeah, which would have been 10. Yeah, so yeah, 10 is close enough.
Okay.
So I remember that. I have no idea where that came from. We didn't know lawyer. I mean, part of our life we were poor. Sometimes we'd be, very lower middle class sometimes, and sometimes working class. And so that's my life until, gosh, after law school.
So hold on. Did you ever think of, yeah, but not where I'm from, because of seeing the people around you growing up in Arkansas and your desire to be a lawyer? Did you see that people weren't normally lawyers that came from Arkansas and got out? Or has that never affected you?
I didn't see that. I mean, I saw TV a little bit.
Okay.
But wherever I got that idea for that. What I do believe, though, is that, when I would tell people I wanted to be a lawyer, this cute little kid, 10-year-old kid, 11-year-old, and they responded positively. And I liked that. And I don't know. I literally have no idea where that thought came from, but I think it was reinforced by people saying, that's great.
Yeah, so there was supportive. But I mean, it's like your family wasn't lawyers, like you said, you're middle class and, lower middle class. But it's like, did you know or see aspirationally that there were other people that were lawyers in Arkansas?
No.
So isn't it interesting that you overcame what other people wouldn't have been like? They didn't have a role model to follow to be able to do that. So tell us more about like how you went and pursued this. Give us the short answer, because I know you've had a lot of different ones, but the highlights that people need to know to be like, how'd you go from desire to execution in what people think it might be an overnight success because they only see you as a lawyer now?
Yeah, so for me, I got an ROTC scholarship. Without that, I never would have gone to college. And got with that ROTC scholarship, I got a second academic scholarship from Loyola. And then Loyola also offered to ROTC scholarship winners free room. And so I ended up going to Loyola, and all that had to be paid for me for 4 years, all that had to be paid was the meal plan that first semester. I ran for student government my junior year and actually got a pretty good stipend for that. And so I was actually going to the bursar every month, getting a check written to me to go to college.
Nice.
And so that's how I got through undergraduate school. And then I went to Tulane Law School. There was a lot of student loan debt there that I had. And then the summer jobs that I did to, contribute to that, but worked through. And then I had that ROTC obligation. So the whole time I was at Tulane, I had, Army I was going into.
So knowing as a lawyer, right, how did you know, because there's so many different types of law to practice, how did you know what kind of lawyer you wanted to do?
I had no idea back then. It's funny. My wife laughs. My kids laughed. My kids laughed when they were elementary school. They knew more than I knew when I was in college. I thought a lawyer was a lawyer, and then learned that heck, I learned when I was in law school even more. I didn't even know the breadth of law specialties that existed in that. I just thought lawyers were lawyers. I watched the TV, just naivete, I guess. But got out of law school, went in the Army, and was put into the JAG Corps. And most of the practice there was actually criminal defense. And I had some amazing stuff for someone my, youth and inexperience up in Washington, D.C. I really had some interesting contract fraud done at the Pentagon that I was lead counsel on as a brand new guy.
You're in your 20s, right?
Oh yeah,
So
mid-20s.
So here you are, young lawyer, defending some cases, criminal defense. So did you decide to stay criminal defense all the way through?
No. In fact, I did more than that. I just had that case. I had every soldier in the Army for probably 2.5 years who got AIDS. I counseled them because I was the attorney that did that for Walter Reed Medical Center. So every single, whether it was in Korea or Europe or wherever they came through, which was very sad in a way. It was scary too at first because this was when it was first coming out, mid-1980s. But I meet them, everyone, and talk to them with the rights and what was available to them. They wanted to fight that. So I look back and at DC and one, the city was fantastic and living there at that time, but the experience that I got was fantastic. Definitely a confidence builder.
So when did you decide what kind of attorney you wanted to land on?
Well, then I made the decision I want to go into investment banking. A friend of mine from Tulane Law School went into investment banking, was working on Wall Street. And he said, man, this is right up your alley. And he said, why don't you take the GMAT? And I did really well on it and got accepted to Columbia. So I was going to go into investment banking. That was my intent the whole time. Ended up not doing that, went back to Memphis, and I joined a very good law firm down there. Really, in fact, it was the first firm to go statewide in the state of Tennessee, very first one. But it wasn't statewide yet. It was only in Memphis, and they had a very, very large. They did commercial work. They did banking work. They did a lot of work, transactional work. But they had a very, very large bank fraud case, and got some work on that. I was a brand new attorney there. In fact, I was still waiting for Tennessee to approve my bar reciprocity. And then that firm ultimately became the first firm to go statewide in the state of Tennessee, which brought me to Nashville.
It's interesting about a journey because one of the things I noticed, and you were an attorney, literally for decades. But one of the things I noticed about you is that you're not a typical attorney, 6-minute increments, just get people in and out. You're more relational. How do you describe why that was so important for you to not just be an attorney, but also be somebody who listens and also wants to build a relationship? Because that's not normally what people experience with attorneys.
Yeah, I don't know. I think some of it may be that growing up in rural Arkansas and the way that we were brought up. I don't know. I have no idea, but you're right. And I do two things. I want my clients to be successful. If they can achieve what it is they want to do, whether it's and I've had some big matters, by the way, some very big, both national, international, state, high numbers, low numbers. I've had some small ones too, contracts and things, again, litigations, but I've had some big ones. So, uh, the client they want to win, but sometimes you can't. And you just do the best you can to minimize the exposures. And I almost feel empathic with, empathetic to, or empathic. I mean, how would I feel? What would I want? What would I want if I were in the same position? And, try to accomplish that. So I want them to understand, okay, this outcome is really good and we're all happy. That you don't have to explain that one. The outcome, maybe not what they wanted originally. Well, here, keep them informed as you go along. And then at the end say, look, this is okay. You can pivot from this. Because again, from my own background, look what I've pivoted from in my life to become, the honors and the awards and ultimately managing the law firm I was talking about, opening up. The person before me opened up. We'd already opened up all Tennessee. Then we opened up in Arkansas. Then I opened up in Texas when I was the managing partner of that law firm. So, you can recover from things.
Yes, it's your resilience, and that's the thing. That's why I wrote the book. Yeah, but I think a lot of people look and go, you lose a case or you lose something, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's devastating, and it could be emotionally, but it's how you recover from things that are unexpected. It's how you recover from things that you say to yourself, this isn't going to work, or you have a yeah, but. And through even your law career, you've had opportunities to show people because you've understood common law, being down in Louisiana and New Orleans, and you being able to look at things differently. You've had attorneys that didn't see what you saw the future could be. Tell us about yeah buts when it's somebody else that has a yeah but and you can't get them to change.
Yeah, that can be really hard sometimes to get them to see, what it is, the impasse that they have to deal with. Sometimes they don't get over it. Sometimes they hate the system. Sometimes they don't like that outcome, maybe, but at least they understood why it happened. But then sometimes, they did really well, a lot better than they thought they were going to. So it's going to be really interesting in the next 10 years, the evolution of law and the uncertainty and the varying that you can have depending on which court you're in and which lawyers you have. And we'll see what happens with that. I don't see that being long lasting, though.
Hey there, it's time for a quick break. While we're diving into how to live, learn, and lead better, I wanted to let you in on something I'm really excited about. If you've ever found yourself stuck in the yeah but cycle, those moments where excuses get in your way of your potential, my new book, Yeah But, Cut Through the Noise to Live, Learn, and Lead Better is for you. The book is packed with practical strategies, real stories, and actionable advice to help you stop making excuses and start making progress. Whether you're a leader, a learner, or just someone looking to cut through the noise, Yeah But has something for you. And here's the best part. For a limited time, you can grab a chapter for free. Just head over to my website at www.markawolfe.com/book to get started. Readers have already said that the perspective and stories guided them to get unstuck and move forward. All right, let's get back to the show and dive into more ways to break through those yeah but moments.
Sometimes people see an idea, right? So in the book, and yeah, but you talk about in your chapter on how you overcame somebody else's yeah, but because they wouldn't change. You were working on international affairs, you were seeing where the business could go, you were building a part of this law firm in a way where there was a lot of things that they could have easily used as a springboard to continue to grow their firm. How do you deal with something when you come to an impasse when you're like, okay, this is what we can do and I can see it, but they don't? What, tell me about that story.
Yeah, so that talking about the MBA and the experience on the business side, law. There's two ways to sell something. You've got price differentiation. You've got product differentiation. In law, it's mostly price and reputation. The product, yeah, there are some very good and different. Don't get me wrong. There are firms that can do things that very few people can do. So I'm not saying there's not product differentiation, but by and large, it's pretty much the same. Although it's controlled by the different states. Each state has its own laws, and then you have the federal law too. The uh, 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 and I'm sorry, you asked a question. I digressed and shouldn't have done that.
No, it's more about like, you were trying to explain to your firm what the future could hold.
Yeah, and so what happened was that the firm was, Nashville specifically, the firm was facing this competition. I could see it coming, coming into Nashville. I'd been contacted by firms to join their firm that they were bringing to Nashville, Tennessee, because of the business growth and the opportunity that was here. And that was something I thought, gosh, we've got offices in Texas, we've got them in Arkansas, and we've got them in across state Tennessee. And so how can we differentiate ourselves? How can we be the buyer and not the bought? And so you already had so many firms that did outstanding litigation work. So did my firm. Outstanding business work. My firm did that before. They were outstanding business work. But when we went statewide, we became a boutique, more or less, in litigation, which is not what I had gotten into originally, but that's what we became, particularly when I came over to Nashville. So how could we differentiate? Well, I had started in 2014 developing these relationships with attorneys in other countries around the world, in France, in Germany, in Africa, in South America, in England, China. So I was building these relationships, and so I decided that I wanted to do just an experiment. And I know I introduced him to you, but I brought in an attorney from a Mexican law firm, had multiple offices across Mexico. I brought in an attorney up to our office, and he stayed in for like 85 days. It was just under the amount that you could stay in the United States under the laws that we have here. And the stay was 85 days. We met with probably 87. I'm close on the numbers. Potential clients. I don't know whether it was most, but it's pretty close. They were contacting us. We were written up in the newspaper, the National Business Journal, written up because that had not happened before. And so that was a proof of concept to me. I thought, this is how we can differentiate. And so what happened is that I want to build start out with just a base, and then maybe get with them or somebody else. And more specifically, I guess back then was NAFTA, and develop a practice on that, and then grow from that. And we would be unique and competitive into an area in a growing, booming city business-wise. And firm didn't want to do that. And so what I did is I stepped down because I couldn't start looking for a job when I was managing the firm. It wouldn't have been appropriate. So I stepped down as managing partner and actually reached out to a Mexican firm about opening up here. They weren't willing to do that. And then I next called a firm up in New York City. Said, if you'll open an office down here, I'll leave my firm and run it for you.
And it's interesting because, I think a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people that work for businesses see potential and actually can do proof of concepts and other people believe it. But sometimes due to fear, due to short-sightedness, due to yeah buts, some of the leadership is like, we can't do it because, or they don't even consider it. And that's even worse. When people don't even consider the idea because of where it came from. We're not going to listen to this person that's going to tell us to do that. Do you know how we got where we are now? Not because of you. We built this decades before you were even here. And I'm not saying that's your case, but what I see is a lot of people are so narrow-minded to potential that they don't grow and evolve. And it's not even a pivot. We're talking what got you here won't get you there. So you need to evolve. We've seen products die because of that, like the BlackBerry, right? People love their BlackBerry, but because the company didn't evolve and the market changed, and there's so many examples. So it's interesting you did that, but if you would have stayed and not done that, when we had conversations, because I originally talked to you about it, I was like, how did they not see where this could be? And you care about it so much. You loved working internationally. You loved helping people that were local, but also international. So you did get to leave and you did get to do something else. But there's so many people that don't because they're afraid and they're fearful. And you weren't a spring chicken when you left either. You weren't in your 20s or 30s when you had a while at that firm, built up a reputation, built up a salary. Wasn't that a huge risk to just be like, I'm going to go somewhere else?
No, yes, it was a risk. It was definitely because I was highest paid. There was one other equally paid with me at my prior firm. So there was a risk in that. But, living where I had come from, if the money was okay, I was willing to take the risk. I'm not risk averse. Which, interesting, by the way, has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Law is one of the most risk averse as an industry in the world.
It told me a story one time about how you learned so much about your people skills, and it has to do with a sugary beverage. Do you read that story about Dr. Pepper and about selling and?
Oh yeah, that was the job I took between first year of law school and second year. So the jobs you were going to get back then, they paid $5 or $6 an hour for first year law students.
Better than 95 cents you were getting paid in the race field.
Or less. I think it was 75 or 80 or 90. It is somewhere in that range. And so what happened is that someone had connected me with someone at Dr. Pepper who lived in Dallas, and they were trying to increase the market there. And this person who was not in New Orleans had said they're looking for somebody. If you don't have a job down there yet, which I didn't, I was still waiting to hear from the other law firms I'd interviewed with. So I went and one of them that I really wanted, they went and met with this guy. He said, yeah, what we're doing is we're going to be giving away free Dr. Peppers. Charge anything? No, we're just going to give them away. We want people to taste Dr. Pepper because we want to increase the market share here. Like, okay. And he asked what it was, drive a van around all day. They would set you up at festivals, at grocery stores. You could pick your own places. There was a beach on Lake Pontchartrain I could go out to, set it up myself. And so $7.50 an hour. Like, ooh, so I was already happy when I heard that. But I think he thought, well, there's no way I can get the guy. So he told me, he said, and I'm stuck with that. That's as high as I can go. But we have unlimited overtime, as much as you want to work. I'm thinking, well, that's time and a half. So I loved that job for Dr. Pepper.
But you mentioned that when other people were law clerking and serving coffees and filing things, you got to speak with thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Mm-hmm. So tell me how, because what I'm trying to help other people see is that you're not just a typical lawyer. Like, you care about people, you're willing to do the job that other people are like would think that it's below them. I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm not going to serve Pepsis for $7.50 an hour to be able to travel around. But what you told me is that you got to meet so many people. You know how to interact with people in all walks of life.
Oh my gosh, that was really one of the best jobs I ever had in terms of fun, and money was pretty good too. Because
But the unlimited overtime,
yeah,
you were crushing it.
yeah, I was probably working 80, 100 hours a week.
Of course you were.
With most of that being the overtime.
Right.
I loved it. But yeah, so you'd stand there, and so everybody that's coming up, you end up having these conversations with. See, if you had known me back when I was 12, 13, 14, I was really shy. And I wouldn't even look at people.
You come a long way, Mark.
Yeah, but it's things like that. And so here I am meeting these strangers coming up, and I'm talking to them and having to carry on small talk, and then it turns into a conversation, and then you start talking to somebody else, and it just became okay, and you're enjoying that, and then you never see them again. But then you had 2 minutes of really nice time with somebody. And I much prefer having a nice time with someone than not getting back to the Boolean.
Right.
The not nice time.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think people don't recognize often enough that the journey to where they want to go is to lean into things that are uncomfortable. It's easy to be not disconnected from people, but it doesn't last forever because you're still going to have to interact. So imagine that these soft skills, learning how to interact with all these different people. And there's people that think like, well, these aren't people you're dealing with as an attorney. Well, you're dealing with different personalities and behaviors and different people, walks of life. If you don't know how to deal with all different kind of people, how well are you going to do in life? Because no matter who you are, you're going to have to work with people that are same and different than you. People that are angry because of them being hurt or angry, or being angry because of what's going on and the outcome. If you don't know how to interact, that's going to leave you behind. So you took early on this ability for you to figure out people, interact with them. But there's another thing you mentioned is like, and I think it's such an important point. It's like you care about people even if they don't become your client. Like you actually go out of your way to help people. And it's not just about the making of money or even winning a case. You're available as a resource because you care. How do you deal with controversy or people with a different approach to you're wrong for taking this case?
If ethically you can't take it, then you shouldn't. It just morally or what, if you can't do it, then don't. And I've had some of those. But I've also had some that's like, okay, I wish I were on the other side, but there is a dispute here. I would rather be on the other side. But you take it and you go with it. And usually there's a lot of gray. It's not black and white. Those you can.
Not everything's Boolean.
That's right. Yeah, well, everything's Boolean, but it's much more apparent early on. And so what you're trying to do in that case is if your side is on the tough side, then you're trying to get the best deal for your clients you can. You're not, if it's a litigation, for example, we're going to lose this ultimately, but it's the difference between, 10 million and 5 million, or, I had one, here's a great example. So I had in fact, this is a real good example. I was early in my career, and we couldn't get a matter resolved. This is a major international client. Wasn't a huge case, but it wasn't a small case either. And so they had one, it was a personal injury case. I was a young attorney with my prior law firm. And their final take it or leave it was $500,000. Take it or leave it. The tried a week-long jury trial. And he was an executive with a company, by the way, the plaintiff in that case. And so the jury deliberated, they came back, and the judge said, have you reached a decision? And the jury said, yes, Your Honor, we have. And he said, what is your decision? Said, we find in favor of the plaintiff. I'm like, okay. In the amount of 500, I thought, dollars. That asked for $500,000. and was awarded $500,000, and they were awarded $500. That's a win. We lost the case,
Right.
but that was a win. Anyway, that client ended up being a client of mine for 30 years after that.
Wow.
Major international client. I had a lot of work with them.
It's interesting because there's a lot of things that people don't know about law. And again, this isn't a law podcast. It's really about, sometimes people need help. Like there's a chapter in my book, it's Yeah, but I Need Help. And part of our conversation early on, when we were talking and you were telling me about what was going on, I would listen as a friend. And, we'd talk about the Predators, Nashville Predators and hockey. And you kept telling me again and again about your ideas, always talking about the future. And I was like, okay, does anybody else talk about that here? You're like, no. And I was like, well, who are you sharing this with? You're like, anybody to listen, because I really think this is where things are going, right? And part of our dialogue, and you even mentioned this to me, was that I was a catalyst, or at least a person who you could bounce ideas off of because it made sense. Tell me more about the conversations we had, because I've never really influenced an attorney to do anything. And you are the first attorney that I helped see something beyond what they saw for themselves. Tell me more about that story, about how the transition and what role I played at all in that dialogue, our conversations.
Yeah, so the move from that other law firm was tough in a way. And by the way, your book is wrong in one respect. Unfortunately, it's printed. And so when, I struggled myself first. I had to work through myself to see what I thought was the answer, and that was leaving the other law firm. And I was still managing that law firm at the time. So I had the ethical obligation, fiduciary obligation, all that. And so I'm struggling with that, and I finally decided I can't. I mean, my heart's not in it. This is a terrible missed opportunity. We don't do this. So I went and talked to my wife. So in the book, you have that I said that I would be laying on the deathbed and I wanted to think about my family when I'm on my deathbed. No, what sealed it for me was my wife responded to me. She said, when you're laying on your deathbed, I want you to be thinking about us, not your decision to stay with the firm. So she's actually the one that said that. When I got that, then I knew. And that's when I stepped down, probably within just weeks of that. And that's when I started sneaking secret free insight from you while buying your coffee. I didn't know that you were picking up, but I should have thought so, since that's what your job is.
Yeah, but I mean, I listened to people and I listened to you as a friend, and I heard so many conversations about your vision for the future and about how many people you helped. And it wasn't just aspirational. You as an attorney hear opportunity, hear even a situation that's not going to be optimal, but it doesn't have to be as bad as it could be. That's still a win because it's less painful. It's not always about a binary win where it's a win or lose and we get it all or we get none. Sometimes it's just about mitigating the risk or the effects. And I'm really proud to say as a friend that you made that decision and that you did that because of that decision, you got to not only extend your career, but your wife has no regrets that you won't be on your deathbed.
That's right.
Being able to do that. How cool is that? So Marc, what else is there as we kind of wrap this up? What else is there that you want to make sure people know?
So for me, and I don't think this will ever change. I mean, things will change. Like I said, the legal industry is going to change and it's going to be extraordinarily disruptive. But some things won't change. And one is there are people out there that have great knowledge who are willing to share. And you and I have talked, there's 4 people that profoundly have impacted my life, and my father being one. Jim Leroy, he was unbelievable individual. Memphis, both of them are dead now. In fact, everybody I'm about to talk to is dead. Another was Joe Spicer, the law firm. Just an amazing guy who did common sense. He's the one I'd write these scholarly research papers, our motions, and to file with the court, and he'd come back and say, "You got to get out of the ivory tower. You've got to tell the story. Tell the story." And he's the guy that drove the story. And I always say it. Now, there's everything in life. It's a story. Everything. And you can either say it well or not say it well. And he was definitely my influence here. But another one was Kimmons Wilson. Kimmons Wilson was the founder of Holiday Inn. And I had the great opportunity when I was a senior in law school, third year in law school, Liberty Bowl, and I believe it was Bear Bryant's last game, as a matter of fact. But went to the banquet as a guest of somebody, and Kimmons Wilson stood up, and he's speaking to the two football teams, and he said, men, I'm going to give you some free advice. And if you follow my advice, you will be successful. You will be more successful than you can even imagine. Just follow this advice I'm going to give you. And I'm sitting there thinking, wow, this guy is one of the richest guys in Tennessee and the founder of Holiday Inn. Later sold to Promise and then to somebody else, I guess. But so I'm going to listen to him. And he said, all you have to do is work hard half a day. Half of your work day, you work hard. I'm thinking, whoa, I'm really going to listen to this guy. I could work 4 hours and be successful. And he said, and it doesn't matter whether it's the first 12 hours or the second 12 hours. And that's the first time I ever thought of that. So the point of that being, and by the way, I changed my life after that. I didn't have 8-hour days. I had 12-hour days and 15-hour days. And you put in that effort, and the good will come. But listen to people who are successful. You know, you have a better chance of being successful yourself if you emulate those successful than if you emulate those who weren't successful. Look at those that can give you the advice that have done it well.
Well, Marc, thank you so much for taking time. Thank you for sharing some of your great stories and some of your successes and your journey to where you are and where you're still going. And your bio and all the way the contact information will be in the show notes. Thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Yeah But podcast. If today's episode provided valuable perspective on how to overcome the excuses that can hold you back, let us know in the comments. Remember, it's not about the yeah buts. It's about finding ways to live, learn, and lead better every day. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little kick to get past their own yeah buts. And don't forget to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And for even more tips, connect with me at markawolfe.com/podcast. Until next time, keep challenging those excuses and keep moving forward.